Good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to our Council Budget webinar. I'm Councillor Lynn Hale, I'm the Deputy Mayor of Croydon, and I am your chair for tonight's event. You can access captions by changing your settings in the video controls, where you can also choose your preferred language. This evening is an opportunity for you to hear about the Council's financial situation, our budget proposals for 2025-2026, and to ask any questions you might have. I'm joined here this evening by the Executive Mayor of Croydon, Jason Perry, who will start us off with an overview of Croydon's finances, and Councillor Jason Cummings, our Cabinet Member for Finance, who will then take you through the budget plans for 2025-26. We also have in attendance the Council's Section 151 officer, Jane West, and her deputy, Alistair Banning. We will then move on to questions from residents, and we have had a number submitted in advance. You can also submit your questions via the chat, and we will prioritise those with the most likes. If we don't manage to get to all of the questions, we will ask for your name and contact details so that we can get back to you with a written response. Our moderating guidelines are available online at the Council's news site, news.croydon.gov.uk. Tonight's event is part of our public engagement on the Council's budget proposals. There is a survey available online at getinvolved.croydon.gov.uk until the 9th of December. So if you haven't filled out the survey, then please do so. Finally, I would like to let you know that we will be recording this session and it will be shared on the Council's channels after the event for anyone who missed it. So we're going to start now, and I will be handing over to Mayor Jason Perry. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you very much, Lynn, and welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. I'm Jason Perry, the elected Mayor of Croydon, and we're here to talk about our budget proposals for next year, the challenges we face, but most importantly, the action we're taking to fix Croydon's finances. You'll probably be aware that as a council, we're required by law to set a balanced budget, setting out how we'll spend your taxpayers' money and where we will invest and where we will save. As Mayor, I put forward proposals in a budget in the autumn, and the council will take a decision on these proposals and set the council tax and the budget the following February or March. We published proposals in October, and we're carrying out an engagement exercise to ask people of the Croydon, what do you think? And this webinar is part of that engagement process. And you can go online to getinvolved.croydon.gov.uk until the 9th of December to give us your views. As Executive Mayor, I promise to listen to Croydon, so it's really important to me to hear your views ahead of that budget setting process. I thought I'd quickly give you an overview of the Council's current position. And the council does have some serious financial challenges. And when I was elected as mayor in May 2022, the finances were an absolute mess. The council had suffered a financial collapse in 2020 due to some serious failings from the previous council. I promised residents that I would make fixing the finances my top priority and get our borough back on the map for the right reasons. And we have been making good progress. We've balanced our budgets for the past 2 years, but like councils across the country and particularly across London, we're facing extreme funding pressures this year. Massive increases in demand for some of our statutory services, such as homelessness and social care, together with the increased costs of living, are having an impact on budgets across London. And as a group of London councils, we have written to the government about these unprecedented funding challenges, and we await their response. On top of this, Croydon has an historic £1.6 billion debt burden, which will cost the council over £60 million of interest in the next year. This is our third largest expenditure after children's and adult services. And the scale of our financial challenge means Croydon is going to continue to need extra help from the government next year. In previous years, this has been a £38 million capitalisation direction, and we can't continue just taking these extra payments. We have to have a solution to Croydon's debt problems, and we are continuing to discuss that with government as we go forward. But we can't just wait for the government to come back to us. We have to work on our issues here locally at a local level to get our finances back on track. And I want us to do that in a way that puts our residents first. My Executive Mayor's business plan sets a clear direction for the council and for Croydon, sets out how we will work with our partners to deliver on the issues that I know people care about, from protecting vulnerable children and adults, to keeping our streets clean and safe, to regenerating our town centre, to restoring pride in our borough. In the past 3 years, we have saved £137 million, with more savings planned this year. And in our 25-26 budget, we set out the action we're taking to help meet our financial challenges. And my Cabinet colleague, Councillor Cummings, will take us through the budget proposals for 24-25. But I want to be really clear about making cuts. The salami slicing of services is not the answer. It's not the right decision for our residents here in Croydon. The scale of the challenge means that we must do things differently. We must transform as a council. We need to fundamentally change the way we do things to save money, use new technology, and to become more efficient. So our budget proposals include plans to invest in changing the way our council works. I want us to save money in a way that puts residents first by becoming the most cost-effective, efficient council in London. Through our Future Croydon transformation plan, we are modernising the way we deliver services so that Croydon can offer you the good value you deserve and be there for you when you need us. We are trying to simplify our organisation. We are trying to harness new technology, and we're also working closely on how we can do things better with our partners. And in so doing, restore pride in our place, which I know matters to everyone in Croydon as much as it matters to me. With regard to council tax, I pledge not to increase council tax above the referendum limit set by government for all London councils this year or in future years. And our budget proposals include a 4.99% council tax increase for next year. I want to end by just saying Croydon is making some really strong progress in getting our finances straight and improving the way we deliver our services. But we must keep heading in the right direction, and our budget plans for next year set out how we will do that. And I'll now pass over to Councillor Cummings, who's going to talk through some slides around Croydon's finances. Thank you.
So, Croydon's budget proposals, this is for 2025 to 2029. That's a period that we would refer to as our medium-term financial strategy. We don't just work on 1 year, we're always looking further forward to those pressures coming down the line. The main considerations which we have when we're setting that budget, as you can see, the financial challenges that we're facing across London, much like other councils, significant inflationary pressures. Although inflation overall as a headline figure nationally has come down a lot, there are still very high levels of inflation in some specific industries which are affecting our costs, primarily around children's social care placements, in adult social services, and indeed for temporary accommodation. And that is putting a significant amount of pressure on us and other London councils. We also have uncertainty at this moment in time around the amount of money we're going to be getting from central government and with grants. The local government finance settlement only comes out just before Christmas. We're expecting it on the 19th of December. And it's then that we will find out the detail in sort of pound notes for what was announced at the autumn statement by this government and exactly how that will affect Croydon. As an example of that, the announcements that came through with regard to national insurance contributions, whether or not local government will actually receive additional money to fund that, we don't yet know the answer to that question. And that makes millions of pounds difference in either direction in terms of our budget setting. So we'll have much more information after that information comes through. We also here in Croydon have some very specific challenges that relate to us. The 1.3 billion general fund debt, that excludes the debt that relates to our council housing. So that 1.3 billion, that's all paid for out of the same money that pays for things like bin collections and other council services. And that's over £60 million per year that we're having to pay out on that. And that is a huge amount of money. If you imagine what that could do in terms of council services if we didn't have that debt, it's an extraordinary amount of money. And we're also relying on what's termed extraordinary financial support from government, which is forecast at £38 million per year. Now, I want to be really clear about this. It's called extraordinary financial support, but the government is not giving us any money at all. What it's doing is it's allowing us to use money from the sale of assets to fund our day-to-day services, which is not normally allowed. So when you hear that the council's getting support from the government, it's not actually getting any money. They're just letting us spend more of our capital money funding our day-to-day services. Okay, next slide, please. This is just an illustration for you of just how large Croydon's debt is and how it compares to other councils. You'll recognise some of those names on there of other London boroughs. So this is our debt as a percentage of what we call our core spending power. So the amount of money we've actually got to spend on our services. And our debt is 479% of that spending power. And as you can see there, right across London, everyone is lower than that. And across England as a whole, the average is 227%, so less than half. So if we were a normal council, you would expect us to have around half of the debt that we currently hold. And that's one of the big things which is impacting our financial sustainability at the moment. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have quite a bit of money coming and going out, but where does it come from? So 45% of the money which we use as council comes directly from yourselves and us as we pay our council tax. So that's the biggest part of our income. It didn't always used to be that way, but that is how local government is funded these days. 17% of it from business rates, and then you'll see 26% from grants, which are a lot of them for very specific purposes, such as public health. That capitalisation direction line there, again, that's not new money coming in, that's us funding our expenditure from being able to use assets sales. It's not additional money coming in from the government. And then 6% is sort of all the rest of the bits and pieces all scooped up into one area. But it's there to illustrate that the vast majority of our money is generated here locally in Croydon through council taxpayers. Next slide. Okay, so that's where the money comes from. And then where does it go? Now, the biggest expenditure we have is on adult social care. And you'll see there £186 million each year. That is it's a massive burden, but it's also really important that the money is being spent there and it's doing a lot of good for our residents. Children, young people and education, that's not schools budgets, that's done separately, but this is for children, children's care, children's placements, 120 million. And then you'll see there those borrowing costs, and this is for the 24-25 budget setting. Those costs are going up year on year. £59 million, more than we spend on any of those services you see below, is just on servicing our debt. And then you'll see each of those areas as they go down. The housing line there, just to be clear about that, that is housing which sits in the general fund. It's not council housing. We have an awful lot more money that's spent on council housing, but that's done in a separate account and is kept separate from normal council services. So as an example there again, we are spending nearly £60 million in this budget on those borrowing costs, and the whole of highways, all of our roads, all of our parking and transport amounts to 24 million. So you can see in real terms there just how much those borrowing costs are. Next slide, please. Okay, a lot of figures on this slide, but I'll take you through it. This is about the current budget gap for the forthcoming 4 years, and this is before we put in any savings which we've put in there, and also for the later 3 years we're only assuming a 2.99% council tax rise. That's not because we're saying that's what we're committing to. It's because we don't yet know what the referendum cap level the government will set. So we are being prudent around what level that is at. If they set a higher cap, it's very likely that the council tax rise will match that, as it is doing this year with the 4.99% cap. You'll see there as well that because we are selling assets, on the next line down, we are able to make a level of savings from paying down our borrowing and stopping that borrowing going up. But there is only a limited amount of assets the council has, and we can't carry on doing that forever. We've then got lines with proposed savings that are currently built into this plan that we've already committed to. And we've got a lot of work also still going on at this point in time around what we call our target operating model, and also looking at services and savings and efficiencies that can be made. And we know the number of those are going to be coming online before we set the budget in March, and in future years, we also make predictions on those. So that's why that last line there with the 5, 10, 15, 20 is quite general. Those become more specific as we get to the budget setting time. But you'll still see that that leaves a significant budget gap, and that is around that ongoing loan costs, debt costs that our high level of borrowing has placed on the council, and also those pressures that we're experiencing in year from this year with regard to children's placement costs and temporary accommodation and special education and needs transport. So the scale of the challenge for us is still very significant, and it's not going away anytime soon. Okay, next slide, was that last one? Okay, so this is just a breakdown over the 4 years of figures that you saw on the previous slide with savings, so you can see where we're looking at making those savings. And it will come as no particular surprise that the areas where we spend the most money are also those ones where there is the most opportunity for us to make savings. These are all backed by individual, fully worked up plans and business cases, and we've done a viability check on all of the savings that are listed on here, and we're very confident that we'll be able to deliver these. And then as each new potential saving opportunity comes along, they get built into this programme, which is why the earlier have more detail in them and the later years have yet to be worked through, but that gets filled in as we go. And then you'll see again at the bottom there the savings which we're making from assets that we're currently selling. So that ends the run through of the slides and the overview of the budget setting process. I think we're going to go to questions in a moment.
Now I think we'll hand back to Lynn.
Thank you very much indeed. And we're going to be starting, as you say, with the first question, which was pre-submitted by Christine. And the question is, how does the council decide which services get more funding when all services are struggling due to national budget cuts?
I think the kind of easy answer to that is that, as it's seen in our budget proposals, is that the first priority is around our adults and children's most vulnerable members of our residents here in Croydon. So the bulk of our funding goes to adults, goes to children's, and goes to those social care costs. We then have that third expenditure around debt, and then after that it's about prioritising those issues around the borough. So planning, keeping the streets clean, removing graffiti, fly tipping, all of those things are the priorities that follow. But the first priority, and many of these are statutory priorities that are laid down by government, is around supporting our adults and children's. Jason.
Yeah, and the start point in any given year is always what we were doing in the previous year. So the council's been around for a long time. Services have been built up over those years with decisions that have been taken both at a political level and also a national level in terms of the legal requirements of the council and our statutory responsibilities. So that's built up over a huge period of time. And it's fair to say that a few years ago, a lot of the decision making that politicians were making was, okay, if we put council tax up by 5% for next year, that gives us X million pounds extra money. What are we going to spend it on? I have to say that at this moment in time, with local government funding where it sits, we're looking at, okay, well, with demand having gone up how much it has, where are we going to make savings? And that's what's taking up most of our time these days. There's very little discretionary spend left in the council. So the biggest part of our process now is where can we be more efficient, where can we manage demand, and also where can we intervene earlier in order to try and prevent more expensive later interventions being necessary.
Thank you very much indeed. And I think building on your responses to that first question, I've got some questions from a gentleman called Joe. There's several questions in here, but they do fit together really, so bear with me if you would. The two major spending areas are adult social care and children, young people and education, which together make up over half of the total spend. How does this compare with other London councils? What are the causes of this spend and what is being done to deal with these issues? And care for the elderly is a big issue for many working families. Shouldn't this be shown separately? Thank you.
As the question, Joe, rightly says, over half of our expenditure is around adults and children's, and kind of alluding to that in the previous response. I think if you were to look at budgets across London, you would find a very similar situation. And I think in some areas you may find it a bit higher, but generally a very similar situation because of those duties that we have from government to look after our most vulnerable residents. The causes, I mean, there is a huge increase of demand around adults and children's services at the moment, and that can be down to many things. I think, you know, we're seeing the lag from COVID and the impact on many of our residents, and we're seeing that come through in budgets, but the demand on our services is increasing, and also the cost of our services is increasing. So with our adult placements, with adult care and with children's placements, we are seeing the costs increase almost exponentially on a daily basis. So whilst we are looking to get the best value for taxpayers' money, we are seeing those costs increase. So we are always looking at the budgets, as Jason just said. It's one of the main things that we spend our time doing, and we have our teams who look after adults and children, looking at placements costs, making sure that they're the right placements, making sure our adults and children have the right care. Sometimes we're able to, as we say, step people down so that they can go to a less costly provision, and at other times we have to step people up so they end up in more expensive. So we are reviewing that all the time within the departments, but there are huge pressures coming through, and that's a pan-London, a national issue at the moment, those additional costs. And care for the elderly, yes, that's built into those adult elements, and I don't know about the splitting out element of that and how easy that would be. I don't know if that's one for Jane to come back on.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we do hold those costs separately sort of within our accounts. It's just for this presentation, we tend to do it by directorate level rather than splitting out those areas. But certainly we publish a budget book each year, and that sets out in some degree of detail, particularly the difference between elderly residents and those of working age with disabilities, for example. So you can see some of the analysis in the budget book.
Jason?
Yeah, the amount of spend that we have on adult social care and children's, in a lot of ways, this is determined by the population that we have in the age profile of that. Here in Croydon, we have very large young population. We also have quite a significant elderly population, and we have a smaller population in those sort of middle years than a lot of other London boroughs. If you go out into the countryside outside of London, you'll see a much higher level in the elderly population. So that's a big driver of it, is just the people we've got. That's who we're spending the money on, and who lives in a particular place drives a lot of those costs. With regard to that, separating out that elderly care, I've got your email address, Joe. I'll get you a breakdown with some more information. I'll send it over to you, and if you've got any further questions, you can come back to me.
Right, maybe just
Yeah, Jane?
a couple of words. The other thing about this particular agenda around adults and children, it's actually a lot of the things that we're working on in terms of sort of building independence and helping people to, have more active lives, back in their own home. Is actually beneficial for the residents as well. So actually, this area is one where improvements in costs actually are also driving better life choices for residents as well, and that's the work we've been doing, obviously with Newton and Empower, to see how we can really build that independence.
Over to you, Lynn.
Thank you very much indeed. And we're going to move on to a couple of questions around financial accountability and trust. So the first one is, when the council last went bankrupt, there are a lot of newspaper articles about money being wasted on various unfinished projects. How do you make sure that doesn't happen again? And then from Graham in the chat this evening, can Croydon residents please have your confirmation that in future the cost of legal expenses will be scrutinised, so we don't have a repeat of the situation where money seems to have been wasted in pursuing the previous administration and the ex-CEO? And then finally, on this particular issue, how does this budget help rebuild trust with residents, especially after all the criticisms of the council? Thank you.
Just a couple of items to cover there. So
just a couple.
Yeah, thank you. On the accountability, I mean, I think, going back to the legacy situation and the financial inheritance when I came into office as mayor in May 22, and it was financial mismanagement and governance failures on an epic scale in this council. And we had the Penn report, we had 2 reports in the public interest, and we also had the Cllr report, which really list all the various things that went wrong and the things that were done wrong by both officers within the council and councillors at the council. And we have handed those files over to the police, and there's a meeting next week, committee meeting next week, where the police have come back and we've looked or asked the police to look at misconduct in public office. And that's an incredibly high bar. And you need to link individuals with individual things that have gone wrong. And I think the answer has come back that there's a corporate element to this, where there has been incompetence. There has been really terrible things done in this council, but it's very difficult to pin that on one individual. So at this point in time, the police do not feel that we can pursue those particular officers. What we are proposing is that we actually look at pursuing a change in the law, because it seems clear to us we're as angry as our residents about what's happened to our borough, and we want to see a law that enables us to stop this happening again, to stop other boroughs having the issues that Croydon has had, and as we've explained through the debt burden, continues to pay for on a daily basis. So we will be looking to government and looking for a change in the law so that we can pursue that. There were a number of projects that were unfinished and failed brick by brick, the refurbishment of Fairfield Halls, the purchasing of hotels, purchasing of shopping centres, things that were then sold at a loss. Brick by brick, a huge loss-making entity. So all of those things were undertaken by the previous council, and this council does not undertake those sorts of projects. I think what happened with the previous council is, rather than face the problems of the finances, they looked to property speculation as a way out rather than being efficient and looking at how to run services. We're very much focused on the management of services, on contract management, and making sure that our services are as efficient as they can be. There has been some legal expenditure on pursuing that accountability, and I think that's right that we have done that. And as I say, we'll now be looking to seek a change in the law, but that will not be a legal process. That will be a lobbying process going forward. And I think with the budget, how do we rebuild trust? I think we rebuild trust by producing budgets, sticking to our budgets, being as open and transparent as we possibly can be with our numbers, and we try to be very open with our numbers, and having these sorts of webinars where we're discussing the numbers and looking at the issues. And I hope that as we go through, residents will realise that we do as we say. Where we say we'll take an action, we take it, and we will see Croydon improve. I think it's already improved greatly over the last 2 years, and we'll see more improvements to come. And I think that will gradually rebuild trust with our residents here in Croydon. Jason.
Yeah, when the council went through its well publicised failings, what also failed were a number of the sort of checks and balances that should have been highlighting what was going on, should have been flagging things, and should have helped to prevent things go wrong. And a lot of changes have been made in those, and I'd just like to highlight some of those now. So if I start with the scrutiny function of the council, these are a number of committees that they can look at basically anything that the council is doing, and indeed things that the council's partners are doing, like the health services. They can call in any of the papers that are being produced or the services and ask them to explain what they're doing. And they also spend a lot of time scrutinising the budget before it goes to full council. Now, when the council was failing, at that time, the scrutiny function was chaired by a councillor who was from the same party as the people putting the papers forward. Now, that's not that uncommon in local government, but it does create a lack of trust in the system. And when the mayor stood for election in 2022, he made a manifesto commitment that we would have the scrutiny function chaired by a member of the opposition. That has happened now. So if you like, no one is now marking their own homework. Those committees are overall chaired by a member of the opposition from a different political party to ensure that we get very robust and serious scrutiny of what's going on, and there's no sort of suggestion there that there's undue influence. We also have audit committees, and the audit committee of this council is now chaired independently. So that function is by a specialist external person who is recruited. They're not a member of any political party at all, and that is improving the actions of that committee and ensuring that that level of scrutiny on the council is improved as well. The external auditors still look with a lot of interest on what's going on. It was the external auditors who highlighted what was going on in the council with their reports in the public interest in the first place. And it's very interesting, if you look at the wording of their reports now, they are very clear on the progress that has been made in the council and how its governance and processes and transparency has improved. And the last thing I'd like to highlight is we've just recently had what we call a corporate peer challenge, where councillors and chief executives and officers from other councils around the country and officers from the Local Government Association came in to look at the council, see how it's operating, and they are producing a report which will be coming out in the early part of next year, which is an overview of where we're at as a council from an independent external perspective. And we now openly welcome that type of scrutiny. When things were going wrong with the council didn't let anyone in, didn't let them look at anything at all. So when that report comes out in the new year, if you've still got concerns about what's happening in the council, or you want your trust rebuilt, I strongly recommend looking at it, because I anticipate that it's going to be good news.
Over to you, Lynn.
Ready for the next question. So this is the two quick questions actually now on council tax. The first question is from Joan. Thank you, Joan, for submitting the question. What will the new council tax increase be? And we've also received another question on this issue. The survey says council tax won't go up again. How can you guarantee that? Thank you.
The council tax, we're proposing the increase of 4.99%, which is the cap that's currently set by government for councils in London. I gave a commitment that I would not go through the cap again, and that is therefore the cap that we're working on, the 4.99%. I'm not sure in the survey why it says council tax won't go up again. Whether it was the reference to won't go through the cap again, the commitment was to not go through the cap again, and I'm maintaining that commitment with that proposal for a 4.99% increase.
Thank you very much indeed. And a couple of questions now on financial support and looking after vulnerable residents. First question from Papa. Can I get help for my electricity bill and my arrears rent? I'm a pensioner, 73 years old, don't feel well, and I can't afford my bills right now. And a similar type of question, how will the budget ensure continued support for the most vulnerable in the community, especially during cost of living challenges and rent arrears increasing?
I mean, cost of living clearly is a big issue for many of our residents at the moment, indeed for our businesses as well, and the inflationary costs that many face. I'm sorry to hear you don't feel well, Papa, and I hope that we can support you. I mean, there is the Household Support Fund, which is a discretionary fund. It's a £6 million fund that the previous government set up and the current government have continued with, which is really good. And that's something that you can apply for. It's discretionary. It covers a whole range of different supports around food, around energy, around heating. So I would ask that you go to the council website to look up the Household Support Fund. If you're not online, please do give the council a call and ask about the Household Support Fund. We do also have a rent support fund as well. So if you are a council tenant, we do have a package of support for our council tenants who may be struggling to deal with their rent. There's council tax support, but there's also another discretionary pot of money to help people there as well. We also have a benefit checker on the council website. So it may well be many people think they're not eligible for benefits, but please do take a look at the council website, take a look at the benefit checker and go through that process, and it may well bring up a result that you were not expecting. And the budget and how do we continue to support, and I think, you know, much of the conversation we've had has been around adults and children's, and that is the focus over half of our expenditure going on adults and children for the most vulnerable residents in our borough, and very much supporting. So Household Support Fund, council tax support funds, there are a number of measures in place to help residents, and a lot of guidance on the council website around other support that may be available, and particularly, as I say, the benefit checker. Jason, do you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to say I know we've got officers online. Can we get the email address for the Mayor's office put into the chat so that if Papa's on the call, they can drop an email in to make sure we've got contact. Yeah. And we'll make sure that you're linked up with any of our services that may be able to provide support, and see what you're eligible for and what we can help with.
Jane, you want to go?
And just to double check, I can't remember if housing benefits team would also be sort of a good one to contact. Yeah. This example as well. So please do put in a call.
Thank you. And I think the message from that is, if you're struggling, please get in touch with us here at the council, and we will do our very best to support you and help you if you really are struggling to manage. We're going to move on now to a couple of questions around fairness and about children and young people. What measures are in place to ensure the budget is fair and does not disproportionately impact certain groups? And the second question around that is, does the budget plan to include community support for young people? These days, there's hardly any funding or schemes to engage young people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, we always endeavour for the budget to be fair, and as Jason said earlier, we're responding to the needs of our borough. You know, every borough is different. Croydon is London's largest borough. We have the largest youth population, the largest older population. So we endeavour to be fair in everything that we do, but we endeavour to respond to the needs of our residents, and that is our primary focus. So there hopefully would not be a disproportionate approach to any particular group. We'd be dealing with the need that comes before us. Community support for young people. There is some support within the budget for young people. Clearly, there's the element within children, young people and education and supporting our young people there. But also within the community, we work very closely with the voluntary and community sector, who provide a lot of support in the local area, in the borough, for our young people. A lot of youth engagement is done through that sector, and we often commission the community sector to support our young people and work directly with our young people. And as an example, at the moment, we're in the 16 days of activism against violence against women and girls, and we have community groups such as Anima Youth, who are supported by the council and who are out in Croydon Town Centre, working with young girls, chatting to young girls about their experiences and offering support to our young residents. So that's just one example of a group that we work with to support our young people, and there are countless other examples along that line as well. Jane, did you want to come in?
I was just going to add around the element about being clear about what the impact might be on groups of people of changes in services. So any change of service, whether it be a budget change or just a change in the nature of the service, we're under the public sector equality duty. So we have a formalised arrangement for making sure that we're addressing any inequalities that may be arising from a service change, and that we're putting in mitigations if necessary, if there is an impact. So yes, absolutely, we do completely take that into account.
Jason?
Yeah, just to expand on what Jane was saying there. So for us as politicians, when we're having to take a decision and we've got a paper in front of us that explains what the decision is we're taking and what the changes are, there's something called an Equalities Impact Assessment, which is a separate part of that report, which is attached to the decision-making process. And that details to us, is this action going to have an impact on any particular protected group within Croydon or any group of our population, so that when we're taking decisions, we're made fully aware of any of those potential impacts and we can work to if there are any. But that is a part of our process. We get full visibility of it, and it's an absolutely essential part of all of those reports that we base our decisions on.
Thank you very much indeed. And our question on parking from Andy. Thank you, Andy. Are there any plans to introduce permit parking on residential roads in and around the football stadium as a means to generate income, but also to prevent overcrowding on a match day? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And perhaps I should declare an interest as a Crystal Palace season ticket holder. There are no plans to look at permit parking at the moment. I mean, we have a number of controlled parking zones across the borough, a number of those around the football ground, but generally across the borough. And we do not have any plans to extend those particular zones at the moment. And I think particularly in the northern parts of the borough, many areas are already covered by controlled parking zones. So there are no plans currently to extend any of those.
Thank you very much indeed. And a question from Di. Please could the tunnel under the underpass be sanitised after people have slept there, as the excrement and urine is totally unacceptable, not fit for anyone to use?
The underpass has been a particular problem for quite some time now, and we are finding that homeless people are bedding down in the underpass, and the conditions are quite awful sometimes, not only for the people walking through, but for those that are trying to sleep there. So our first priority is to try and support those homeless people to try and get them off the street, to help them with whatever needs they may have, so that we can get people into accommodation. We do that regularly. We do engage through our voluntary sector partners with people who may be sleeping in the underpass. And as I say, we do try and get them into accommodation and get them the support they need. When we get the underpass clear, we do clean through, but quite often it becomes quite dirty and untidy quite quickly. We've recently had a fire in the underpass as well, and it's currently closed. We've had to close it for health and safety reasons, so that we can check the structural integrity of the underpass following that recent fire. But what we are doing is we have the Levelling Up Fund, which was money awarded to this council by the previous government, and that's an £18.5 million fund. And one of the issues we'll be dealing with is the underpass, and we will be putting a crossing in, a surface crossing on Wellesley Road, from Lansdowne Road essentially across and into the Whitgift Centre, to enable that much easier route through. And as part of that process, we will be closing the underpass permanently and reorganising the public realm around all the stairs and other things that are there. So it is closed at the moment, as I say, because of a recent fire, and we are looking to close it permanently. Jason.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight it can often be very difficult for one of our residents, just a member of the public, who's walking around the town centre and seeing homeless people out on the street, sleeping out on the street, or indeed in the underpass. But I just wanted to stress that the council isn't ignoring any of these people, and a huge amount of effort and time goes into making contact, directing towards council services, and indeed making sure that the offer of accommodation has been made. And the vast majority of people that you will see out on the street have had offers of accommodation made by the council. So the council is doing that work. What we can't do is we can't compel people. We're not that type of society, but we do work extensively with anyone who is out sleeping on the streets. We are in contact with them. We do know they're there, and we are offering support.
And just to add to that, I mean, one of the things that I've been very keen on is to make sure that we are taking action on these issues, and that we are able to restore that pride in our borough. And we have set up the task force in the town centre, and that's bringing together all of our different partners, different departments within the council, bringing together health, the police, and our voluntary sector partners. And they meet every Monday to discuss the various cases around the town centre. And as Jason says, we are working to support individuals and working to improve both the environment, but improve the choices for people around accommodation, offering accommodation, and trying to get people off the street. So there is a lot of work going into this. It's a very sensitive area, and that's why we do use groups such as Change, Grow, Live, Croydon Reach, who are able to work directly with our residents in that position to give them the support that they need.
Thank you very much indeed. And we're going to move on now to a few questions around the council's staff. They're from a number of different residents, but I'll pop them all together. Why not save money by reviewing the council's recruitment, procurement and waste on public services? Consultants and interim are inevitably more expensive than a permanent and stable workforce. What is now the balance between temporary and permanent staff, and what plans do we have to change the balance? And finally, will this budget lead to job losses for council staff? Thank you.
You do like to throw a lot of those at one time, though, don't you, Lynn? So
it's called giving a bit of thinking time, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. So a number of issues there around staff. I mean, clearly it's a key focus of what we do at the moment, and I think Jane will want to elaborate on some of these issues. But we do have spend control panels within the council. Any recruitment has to go through a panel. It's not just a case of departments employing people because they feel they need extra staff. They have to go through a very full process to employ extra people. Clearly, the use of interim staff and agency staff is a matter of concern, and generally interim and agency staff will cost more than permanent staff. So we do try to avoid those costs, but it's not always something that we can avoid. If we need to bring in specialist support in a particular area or specialist knowledge, sometimes we have to do that through the consultant role, or if it's through or for a short period of time, we may well bring in an interim or a temporary role. So we're always looking at that balance. We're always looking to recruit to permanent roles wherever possible, and that also makes for a better workforce who are permanent, who are bought into the council, are part of the council, want to deliver those excellent services for our residents here in Croydon. And with regard to job losses, there may well be job losses that come through the process. We will try and move people around if we can within the system. We do have vacancies in some areas of the council, so it may well be the option that someone may move to a different department, and it may well be, as we go through various processes, that there may be job losses. I think it would be wrong for me to say that every job is protected, but we're certainly looking to provide the best services we possibly can in the most efficient way that we possibly can. Jane, there's probably a lot more depth that you would like to add to that answer.
As well as the process that the Mayor's outlined, we also occasionally do a sort of top-down review of where we are. We're actually undertaking one of those at the moment in terms of the agency staff provision and just understanding where that's fit, because at the moment it is around about 25% of our staff who are agency staff, and we also believe that that should be a smaller number, and some of that tempting the agency staff to come off of the agency market and actually bring them in as permanent employees. In some cases, actually, temporary staff are actually cheaper than permanent staff. It sort of depends on the job role and position in the organisation. So we're trying to sort of work our way through, but absolutely trying to move to having more staff on the permanent payroll is an important part of our overall workforce strategy. And again, that's being refreshed at the moment. Actually, we feel like we're it's a seller's market at the moment for the staff. It's up to us to be the buyer and to actually offer good terms and conditions at the council, the benefits such as the pension scheme and things like that, to actually encourage people to come away from the agency market and commit to the council and commit to the local residents of Croydon. And in exchange for that, actually sort of providing career paths and training schemes. We're doing a lot around apprenticeships, graduate trainee schemes. So really trying to invest in stuff. We've actually got a big management development programme going on at the moment for the middle managers, again investing in the staff in a way that hasn't actually happened for near on a decade more recently. Part of the question was actually also about procurement, and again one of those top-down reviews is taking place at the moment of procurement, but also we do have the annual procurement plan. We also review that on a regular basis through the cabinet. That gets reported through to cabinet, so we're really clear what our contracts are and which ones we should be looking at to try and drive out value. Not seeing contracts as something that just sort of move on and on, but actually are being actively managed and improving our contract management across the council as well.
That's lovely. Thank you very much indeed. And we're going to now come to our final question. I'm aware there are a few questions I haven't managed to get to, although I've done my best to group them so that we could get through as many as possible. And this question is from Laura, and she says, lots of residents choose to stay in Croydon with the hope of longer term place improvement. The budget shows how challenging the day-to-day is, let alone growth and investment. What would you say to people who are worried what Croydon will become for their homes and their families? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and a question that really cuts to the chase around Croydon, and what we want Croydon to be is that place that is thriving and vibrant and a place where people are proud to call Croydon home. And that's very much what I want to drive through as mayor of this great borough. And, you know, I want our families to stay. I want people to be proud, and the amount of work that is going into the look and feel of the borough generally and into the town centre, and fixing those kind of broken windows of Croydon at the moment. And it's that regeneration of the town centre that will drive our local economy, drive our local jobs, in many ways drive a lot of new residencies and properties in the town centre. So we're doing a huge amount of work around regeneration. We're working with Unibail Rodamco Westfield around their plans for the Whitgift Centre. They've just undertaken their master planning process. We're expecting planning application in the new year. We have the task force cleaning up the town centre and dealing with some of the antisocial behaviour in the town centre. And we have a huge amount happening across Croydon. We've got a new cleaning contract coming into effect next year, and that contract will see more regular cleaning of residential streets across the borough. So there's a whole raft of issues that will come into play over the next few months. But the real thing is around driving pride and improving pride in the borough, and driving that inward investment into our town centre to provide the jobs that we need and the skills that we need, and things such as the old Orders store. In the new year, we'll be seeing some new shops open in the front of the Orders store. Unibail Rodamco Westfield have put new Christmas lights on that building this year. So we're starting to see a change in the look and feel of the town centre. And I think, you know, we have a bright future. We have lots of people interested in investing in Croydon, and we really need to make sure that we drive that investment and make sure that we provide those opportunities for all of our families here to stay and be part of the Croydon journey. And my voice is just about to disappear, so I don't know if anybody wants to add anything. Jason, no?
Yeah. I mean, you know, this isn't a job for us. You know, this is Croydon. This is the place we live. We've lived there for decades. We raised our children here. And we're not going anywhere. You know, this is all about the future of our town as well. You know, so much effort is going into setting those foundations for Croydon to be again a place which isn't sort of mocked nationally, which is kind of where it is, but to make it into that place again where people go, where you can go out safely, and you just think to yourself, well, if we're going out this evening, let's go into Croydon. You know, I know we're not there right now, but it's something we all really passionately want to see and want to be doing on a day-to-day basis. Whilst we are struggling with the finances at the moment and sorting that out, the future is all about turning Croydon again once a place to be proud of.
Thank you very much indeed, and so say all of us. It's just runs through our heart. Croydon is our passion. We're all born and bred in Croydon. Our families, many of them, are still in Croydon, and so many of us remember the great old days of coming into Croydon. And we want to rebuild Croydon. It will be different, but I think it has the most amazing energy, and we stand firm in our commitment to turn Croydon around. So thank you very much. That does now bring us to the end of our session. Many thanks to our panel and to everyone who has joined us this evening. If we didn't get to your question, we will make sure that you get a written response. If anyone has any feedback about tonight's event, please do drop us an email at communications@croydon.gov.uk. And also please do remember to fill in our budget survey at getinvolved.gov.uk ahead of the 9th of December deadline. The link is posted in the chat. And once again, thank you very much for joining us all this evening, and I hope that you have a pleasant rest of the evening. Good night.